Today's episode is for the birds, penguins to be exact, because 111 years ago, three explorer scientists decided that the best way to prove a specific theory on evolution was to travel to Antarctica in the middle of winter and retrieve three unhatched emperor penguin eggs to bring back to England for study. Battling intense blizzards, minus 60-degree temperatures, and navigating by the stars because of pitch black conditions, it would infamously be known as the worst journey in the world, all in the name of science.
Picture it, the year was 1911. American explorer Hiram Bingham. Hiram Bingham. How do I say that? That's hard. Picture it, the year was 1911. American explorer Hiram Bingham.
Hiram Bingham.
Hiram Bingham. Picture it, the year was 1911. American explorer Hiram Bingham. That's never not going to make me laugh. Okay, I'm going to do it. Here we go.
Hey, listen, there's nobody to offend. The guy's an ice cube. Get ready.
Okay, it's already beginning, people.
Just get ready until you get into Machu Picchu. They're just making up words now.
The year was...
I'm being serious, Josh. I'm gonna be more serious.
Okay, I'm good. The year was 1911.
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna hook you up. I'm gonna do it for you, okay?
Okay.
Picture it. The year was 1911. American explorer Hiram Bingham discovers Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas. The Mona Lisa is stolen from the Louvre by Vincenzo Perugia. The first aerial reconnaissance mission is flown by an Italian pilot over Turkish lines. Meatballs and spaghetti were served. And the first Indianapolis 500 race is run with an average speed of a blistering 74.6 miles per hour.
But it was three explorer scientists, Henry Bowers, cherry-garrard.
I was going to be so angry if that's the thing you got right.
Right.
Okay. Oh, okay, cherry-garrard.
All right, guys, page 1.
I'm going to do this so I can't look at you. But it was three explorer scientists, Henry Bowers.
Eddie, you might have to turn off your video from doing that.
I don't know. He's making me laugh so hard. I don't know what's wrong. Okay.
All right, here we go. Wait, no, I muted it. Okay. There you go.
Okay. That's so much easier. Thank you. He's gonna come right on the minute I start talking to him. I know it. Okay. Woo! Okay, sorry. I'm this up. Okay. Okay.
Josh, what is going on?
I don't know.
He's got the gigs.
I swear to God, I don't know where this came from. Okay, hold on.
Got the gigs.
Okay, here we go.
I'm gonna mute my video also, Josh. You're by yourself.
Okay. Wait, okay. Ooh.
You got this, Josh.
But it was three explorer scientists, Henry Bowers. Stop. All right. But it was three explorer scientists, Henry Bowers, cherry-garrard, and Bill Wilson, who were all part of another famous expedition. They wanted to bring back three penguin eggs, emperor penguin eggs to be exact. And why were they doing this? To reveal the evolutionary link between birds and reptiles. If they had just watched Jurassic Park, these dudes would have never had to worry about any of this. Dr. Alan Grant, he would have easily given his theory on velociraptors.
Fun fact, The idea that dinosaurs evolved into birds first came to light in 1860 when a fossilized feather was found in Germany in a layer of limestone believed to represent the late Jurassic period. The man who discovered it, Christian Erich Hermann von Meyer, immediately identified it as a bird, even though many thought it had reptilian traits such as clawed feet, a long bony tail, and the desire to subjugate the human race. However, some years later, biologist Thomas Henry Huxley, a disciple of the school of Charles Darwin, seized on the fossil as an example of an intermediate stage of evolution that showed dinosaurs did in fact evolve into birds. And side fun fact, this is why a lot of times when you find certain fossils like velociraptors, you'll see them kind of frozen in the same position you find bird fossils in when they die, kind of like bent backwards.
Oh, right. I actually remember seeing that in the movie, and I remember them taking that. Yeah, look at that. That's good. And while we're on the topic of weird shit that wants to subjugate us, I would like to say Bigfoot is real. The Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, and the others not so much. But Bigfoot, legit, and I am going to meet one day.
Hey, Josh, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm Eddie Fernandez. I am a Bigfoot. I just Americanized my name to Eddie Fernandez.
Nice.
So before we dive into the expedition, let's talk a bit about why these guys were down there in the first place. Well, Robert F. Scott was a British explorer who convinced all of England that he and his team were going to be the first to reach the South Pole in Antarctica. Scott and his team headed out from England in 1910. In the spring of 1911, he arrived in Antarctica where he made base camp. It was at this time that Wilson made the pitch to Scott that he, Bowers, and Cherry should head 70 miles away from the Ross Island base camp to Cape Crozier, because the emperor penguins lay their eggs in June. But for all those who don't realize this, June south of the equator is winter and north of the equator is summer. So when everyone else is sitting on a beach earning 20%, thank you Hans Gruber and RIP Alan Rickman, everyone at the bottom of the planet is freezing their off. And yet Wilson, the team zoologist, was so adamant about his theory, he was willing to head into the dead zone to prove himself right. Scott was initially opposed to the plan, but Wilson convinced him that the penguin eggs would play a critical role in understanding how species evolve.
And so on the afternoon of June 27th, 1911, Wilson, Cherry, and Bowers headed off into no man's land with 2 sleds of food and equipment. The snow was so thick that they could only pull 1 sled at a time, which basically means they were pulling 1 sled 1 mile, walking back a mile for the other sled, and then walking back another mile to the first sled they had pulled. Or in other words, walking 3 miles for every 1 they gained. The average temperature was negative 40 degrees. And folks, this is well before North Face had Patagonia and Thermaloft and Puffy Loft and any other type of loft that could keep you warm in conditions like this. No, these guys had to kill bears and wear their skins as coats, literally. Back then, it was basically the time you hoped you saw a tauntaun running by and slashed open its belly so you could sleep in its guts and not die of exposure.
And I thought they smelled bad on the outside. It's a dope Star Wars reference, but I can't help but feel bad for these guys and the irony of their situation. If they'd only just taken a huge Bowie knife to one of these emperor penguins and just unzipped it right down the middle like a big penguin jacket and let all the guts fall out, they could just jump in and be warm and cozy. It kind of feels like the same thing that happened to that last guy that died of syphilis on the Tuesday morning before penicillin came out. It's that.
And while this was not the ice planet Hoth, the conditions were no less deadly. It was a 10 out of 10 chompies on the Donner Pass scale, right, Eddie?
Correct. So here comes 2 examples of freezing to death. In the Northeast, you're going outside to take your kid to a baseball practice. There's a stiff breeze and your coat blows away. And when you look down to take a bite of your pizza, it's solid as a rock. For my people in Miami, just imagine you've gone outside in the dead of winter and it's below 60 degrees Fahrenheit with moderate cloud cover.
The snow, ice, the wind, and freezing temperatures were so bad that Cherry took 45 minutes to chip his way into his sleeping bag each night, because during the day it froze into a popsicle. But then, to make matters worse, as they were prepping their tent, it blew away. So like most of us in a situation like that would go, the guys were like, well, Today seems like a good day to lie down and die.
I just want to interject really quick and say that it takes me 45 minutes each night to chisel my way into Josh's panties.
I don't wear panties.
I don't know.
That's all I'm saying. Everything else is legit.
Well, okay. For 2 days, they laid in their sleeping bags without food or cover until the winds died down enough that Bowers somehow managed to find their tent. After the storm calmed down and with minimal life literally left in them, the three found the penguin colony and climbed over a massive ice wall to take 5 eggs. Now, for all of you that don't know, emperor penguins are the largest of the penguin species, standing up at about 4.5 feet tall. So these aren't cute little goofy penguins that can't hurt you if they wanted to. But the men came away with 5 eggs, only to drop 2 as they made their way to the sled.
Hopefully their noses were frozen shut because emperor penguins smell like absolute. I have a friend who went down there for a documentary, and he was not only blown away by their majesty, but from how far away you could smell the undeniable funk of 40,000 years of emperor penguin.
On August 1st, 1911, the 3 men miraculously made it back to base camp. Their clothes were so frozen that they had to cut them from their bodies. Cherry's toenails were falling off, and his fingers were useless. So you would think, okay, cool, end of the story. These guys make it back in one piece, or maybe pieces, considering toenails were falling off, and they had viable eggs with them. But this story keeps going, and it was on October 24th, 1911. Scott and a team of men headed out from Cape Evans to be the first to reach the South Pole. And Bowers and Wilson were like, hey, can we go? These dudes had just survived the worst conditions on Earth, and they still wanted to keep going in the name of science, and in my mind, sheer lunacy. But Cherry, aka Toenailless Joe, had to stay back. Scott's crew of 11 was well equipped for the journey with motorized sledges, horses, and dogs. Actually, motorized sledges. The dogs and horses were not motorized. But before very long, the motorbikes and the horses had to be shot, and the motorbikes did not have to be shot.
I was like, they shot the motorbikes?
But before very long, the motors broke, the horses had to be shot, and the dog teams were sent back. By December 31st, 7 men had been returned to the base. The rest of the guys, Scott, E.A. Wilson, H.R. Bowers, L.E.G. Oates, and Edgar Evans, reached the pole on January 17th, 1912. I think I'm going to start calling you E.F. Fernandez, C.H. Howard, and J.J. Jacobs. It just
I was going to
sounds...
say, L.E.G. Oates, you know, the irony of his initials is that he actually was missing a leg. I don't know if
he would, and is Lego 2 G's? Because then he would be Lego.
I just made that up. Yeah, it's 1 G.
Hey, Lego my ego, said the emperor penguin.
Exactly.
Boom.
Undeterred by the severe beatdown from the elements, Scott and his men had done it. They had made it to the pole first. That is, until they found evidence that Roald Amundsen, famed Norwegian explorer, had gotten to the pole a month earlier. That's right, folks, because there were no satellites or iPhones or anything that would help men find out that Amundsen was ahead of them by a month. They had to find out by seeing the Norwegian flag planted in the ground.
I just want to make sure that all the ladies watching this podcast know that Norwegians always finish first.
Norwegian wood.
Norwegian wood. Well, now, second to reach the pole and with minimal rations due to a miscalculation of food to men ratio, they had packed for 4 men, but 5 came. The party was not only bitter for having not achieved their goal, but they were literally wasting away as they made the slow trek back to base camp. And beyond all other factors, what seemed to do them in was that the caloric intake of Scott's party was way below what they needed to survive. To fuel the massive amount of energy their bodies burned from hauling all the gear, the insane conditions, and the bitter freezing temperatures, they would have needed to each eat close to 7,000 calories per day. But these dudes were living off of like crackers and tea and cocoa powder and coffee grinds and they started not only burning huge amounts of body fat, but once your body has no more fat to burn, it has to get energy from something, and so it starts burning off muscle. And the more they struggled across the icy plain, the more weight they lost and the more exhausted they became, until all that were left were 3 men, including Scott, who ultimately died in the middle of nowhere. Now, ironically, Had they gone all 11 more miles, they would have reached a huge food bank placed specifically for explorers, but their bodies would not cooperate and they died in their sleep.
Cherry, who had stayed back for making the last push to the pole, and his other two friends, Wilson and Bowers, found the strength to head with the search party to find Scott and his men. He was the first into the tent, where Scott, Bowers, and Wilson all lay dead. Devastated, Cherry, who was no scientist, took it upon himself to complete the journey of his two friends, Wilson and Bowers, by bringing back the penguin eggs to the Natural History Museum in 1913. But these snobby British dudes were not only uninterested in speaking with Cherry, but made him wait around for hours while they all conferred with each other about the legitimacy of Cherry's specimens. In Cherry's own words, he said, "I handed over the Cape Crozier embryos, which nearly cost 3 men their lives and cost 1 man his health, to your museum personally, and your representative never even said thanks." For 21 years, the eggs were ignored until Richard Asherton of Cambridge University removed the embryos from the shells and made microscope slides of them to study. But he died before he could analyze them. Then, in 1934, zoologist C.W. Parsons took a look at them and concluded they did not greatly add to our understanding of penguins' embryology. So these 3 men journeyed into the unknown to bring back penguin eggs, only to have them ignored for years and then dismissed as no help towards their final goal. But these eggs are now prominently displayed in the British Museum of Natural History for all of us to see and hear this crazy story. And finally, after reading several articles, I came across one from The Guardian that talks about other eggs that had been collected by men and women and the insane stories behind those eggs. Here are just a few. Edward Stewart Baker, an ornithologist, had his arm ripped off by a leopard while collecting eggs and only survived it by jamming his dismembered arm down the leopard's throat. He was also tossed by a bison and trampled by a rhino, and this dude lived to be 80 years old. That's crazy. John Hanning Speck, during an expedition to Somalia, was collecting bird species when he was captured by tribesmen and stabbed 11 times with spears. Somehow, he escaped and survived and later became temporarily deaf after a beetle crawled into his ear and he tried to remove it with a knife. That is some seriously scientific curiosity if you're willing to be half eaten by a leopard and stabbed 11 times by a Somali tribesman, but hey, that's what this podcast is all about.
All right, folks, that's it for this episode of In the Name of Science. As always, we appreciate you and have tons of more creepy and off-the-road discoveries to talk about. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. And remember, if it ain't weird, it ain't science.
Science!